Welcome to Word Up Community Bookshop. Do anything during the show? Who has not been here before? So I'm going to introduce Word Up briefly before I introduce today's speakers. My name is Veronica, and I'm one of the founders of this space. It's a volunteer staff bookshop and art space, and we've been around since June 2011. When we first opened, it was just supposed to be a pop-up shop, just this 1 month long project that then really took hold in the neighborhood. It was Broadway and 176th Street, and we had the opportunity of this free space that we could use for a month. So we said, everybody come and fill it as much as you can to really show the need for this kind of space, this gathering space in the neighborhood. And so we had events almost every day, and we got extension after extension because there was so much community support for it. Neighbors were telling other neighbors who were contacting, the community liaisons for their elected officials, and then the elected officials started calling the landlord to ask for more time. So we ended up staying at that space for more than a year, beyond that, well beyond that 1 month, and a new landlord in the meantime had purchased a set of buildings, and then so as soon as we celebrated our 1 year anniversary, we got notice that we had to leave. In the meantime, we've been getting extension after extension, and every time there was news that we have another month or another 2 months, there'd be a lot of momentum building. So more people were joining us as part of the volunteer collective, and soon at one point we had 100 people who were just working at keeping the space open 7 days a week, multiple events a day for all ages and in all languages. And when we had to close at the end of the summer of 2012, a lot of the volunteers stayed together for the course of meeting every week for the next year, planning a fundraiser and building, looking for spaces. So we've moved here the summer of 2013 after doing an Indiegogo campaign. We raised $60,000 online, another $10,000 offline from more than 800 funders. And so all of that poured into building this space. It used to be a spa, and there used to be little rooms and sinks all over the place. And we did a lot. And so we've been here ever since, and still doing events almost every day, and still largely volunteer run. About 6.5 years in, I became the first person on staff. I'm the general coordinator of the collective. But we are slowly, our aim is to just be around as long as we can, and to just continue to be sustained by all the people that come in to make up the space. Everyone who's part of the volunteer collective is either lives in the neighborhood or works in the neighborhood or has some close tie to here, and everybody just wants it really to exist in some way. So thank you so much for coming for this event and to celebrate this and to also just be together here and to experience coming all the way up or down or wherever you came from. I invite you to please come back and sign our mailing list for when we do send a newsletter out, or follow us on Facebook or Instagram, or if you want to volunteer, happily take you as a volunteer. And if you want to do any other events here, then please, we have all kinds of events there. We also have community meetings and workshops, and we're trying to expand our hours slowly. And so now I'm really, thanks also to Feminist Press and Jisoo for coming to us with this event. We're really honored that you did, and really happy to be hosting it for a couple of reasons, which I'll go to. But first I'll introduce each speaker. Born in Arecibo, Puerto Rico, Ivelisse Rodriguez earned a PhD in English and creative writing from the University of Illinois at University of Illinois Chicago, and an MFA from Emerson College. She's published fiction in All About Skin, short fiction by women of color, the Boston Review, the Bilingual Review, and others. Love War Stories is her first book. I also wanted to mention that one of your former positions had been with the Kweli, as Kweli fiction editor. There's this big conference coming up on Saturday that you will also be a part of. If you wanted to go to this conference on Saturday, we can give you information. But that journal is a place that Word Up has had a long partnership with too. So I was really excited, particularly to see that connection. And then in conversation with Ivelisse is Jennifer Baker, who's the editor of the forthcoming anthology Everyday People, The Color of Life, a short story anthology, which comes out in August. And we hope to do events in the fall with the anthology and with a local teen and preteen anthology workshop as well. She's the recipient of a 2017 NISCA NIFA Artist Fellowship and a 2017 Queen's Council on the Arts New Work Grant in Nonfiction Literature. She's also the creator and host of the podcast Minorities in Publishing. So, without further ado, I'll turn it over to you.
Ivelisse is going to start us off with a little bit from Summer of Nene, you said?
Yes.
Awesome.
I'll read from Summer of Nene. Okay, I made that comment because this is a story that sort of just came through me, and I didn't really work that hard on it, so it's like the crowd favorite, so I don't normally read it because I resent it because of all the hard work I did on my other stories. But I'll read it tonight. Okay. It's called Summer of Nene. I was there when he fell. We were fucking around in Central Park, had been smacking girls on their asses and running away. Then one started yelling real loud, and this cop appeared out of nowhere, so we just started running. Nene was behind me. He was always smaller, more frail. That cat was always sick. Ever since he was a little kid, there was always some shit wrong with him. So I'm just jetting, but I always used to look over my shoulder for him. That was a habit. But this time I heard him scream before I looked, and I saw my man tumble over some rocks. And I imagined the rocks pierced his back, and he's stuck there for life. Me and the cop get to him at the same time, and my instinct was just to grab him, but this cop dude was like, no, you should leave him here. You'll just hurt him more. But everything in me was fighting to pull him up. He looked all fucked up, like someone dropped Humpty Dumpty. And I wanted to put him back together, set everything right so he's whole again. Nene was always strong. I mean, he was always sick, but he was always down to go outside and terrorize the neighborhood with us. And he would play with that sick shit too. See, everyone on the block knew about his illness, hospitalizations, etc. And no matter what he'd done the previous day, they always let the shit go. So sometimes I would have to leave him where he was because he wasn't going to catch it, but my ass would. It didn't even start with him sucking my dick. No foreplay shit like that. I watch movies and it always starts like that, the inevitable creep to the dick. Nene was sleeping over at my house, and it was finally quiet at 3 in the morning, and that's when he starts. I have my back to him with nothing but my underwear on, and then I feel it next to me, on my skin, right up against my ass. Then he's pushing harder, trying to find the hole. He breaks through, and it's a whole new life. The next morning, he looks run down, coughing all over the place. So my mom takes him home because she's scared I'll get whatever he has. But she doesn't understand that I have never caught what Nene has. But she becomes the concerned mother all of a sudden and takes him away. After the fall, we are sitting in the hospital waiting, and I cry, but not those tears of sadness. It's the tears of anger, the kind when you can't breathe. My face gets all hot and I can't hold it all in. Guttural noises are scattered in with my language. My fists are in a ball, and I just want to hit myself. My mother doesn't understand this rage. If only she would just shut the fuck up and let me cry. All she's done is tell me that I have to be strong. But what does strength have to do with love? He doesn't get out of the hospital for weeks, and when he does, he can't walk anymore. I'm on the stoop and I see him coming down the street, but Nene doesn't look all sad. For us, nothing has changed, so we're just happy to have him home. His mother won't let him come out today though. She says he has to rest in bed first, figure out how to go to the bathroom, shit like that. The next day, me and Kenny are just waiting, and by like 11, he's still not down there. So I stand on the sidewalk and yell, Nene, Nene, over and over until his mom sticks her head out the window and starts yelling at me. Don't you know he can't walk? Get your lazy ass upstairs and knock on the door like a normal person. I laugh and run upstairs because at least I know he can come out and hang with us. He's sitting in his bed when I get there. The lock of hair on his forehead is wet. And I'm like, my man, you need a haircut. You look like John Travolta and shit. His house is mad hot. I pull the covers off him, and his legs look like my sister's, thin and pale. Not me. I'm already brown, but this burning summer has me even darker. So if I was sick, you wouldn't even be able to tell just by looking at me. You can see everything written on this cat's face, on his body. I pick him up and put him in his chair. Then I wheel him to the bathroom, but I make the ride fun. I'm crashing into the wall. I try to zoom here and there, but in reality, his apartment is too small for that. I call his mother to shower him. I'd be scared to undress him, to see him naked. I always have my back to him, and it's always a surprise. I expect it whenever he's at my house, but I can't tell you the precise moment, only that it's after the house is quiet. I tell her I'll be downstairs waiting for him. She's like, you better not fuck around. I need you to come back up here and carry Nene down. I go downstairs and have all this energy, but all I can do is wait for Nene. Kenny sits on the stoop, but I'm on the sidewalk, walking from here to there, the length of the stairs, and I'm telling him a story real loud. Then Jessica, this girl in my 8th grade class who has the fattest ass, walks by and she's like, hey Jimmy, what's up? Then Kenny perks up. She stands in front of me, and the way she moves from side to side, I know she's showing off for me, and I give her that Bobby smile. In that instant, I'm moved from boy to man. I think of her under me. I know what I'm supposed to do. With Nene, though, I know who I am. She starts laughing at whatever shit I tell her, and she glitters in the sun. Mid-laugh, hers, Nene appears. His stepfather brought him down and barks at me to go get his wheelchair. He leaves Nene at the bottom of the stoop, and I run upstairs. When I get back, I've forgotten all about Jessica.
This is like a lot of clicking in my head. So, okay. So that was easy, huh? All right, I'm not bitter. That's fine.
It was like a once in a lifetime kind of thing, so it'll never happen again.
So I was watching your talk earlier on Facebook Live, and the establishment that these are love stories. So it's called Love War Stories. It's hello. But, you know, for me, I kind of feel like every story is a love story. You know, we have these categorizations in publishing. War stories, thrillers, romance, da-da-da-da. And it kind of incites these reactions from people. It's like, it's kind of genre. Oh, that's not for me. But I really feel like all stories are love stories, even if it's not this traditional kind of human-to-human relationship. It can be about your dog. It can be about your sense of place. So do you feel like these are just general love stories? Because you mentioned being anti-love stories.
Yes. I think they're more anti-love stories than they are love stories, especially because, as we were talking earlier, a lot of the girls in the collection, they're really hopeful about love, but then they inevitably end up, in some sort of heartbreak, and my objective here was that, women are taught that they need love, that this is their goal they have to get to. And I want women to see, other narratives where they don't have to end up with a man, etc. And so a lot of the stories end in a kind of tragic way, but some of them are
more like Romeo and Juliet.
But with some of the girls, they learn to stand on their own, and I think that's important. Even if you want to fall in love, you should still be able to stand on your own.
Yeah, and I felt like, I really enjoyed the entirety of this collection, because it'd be weird if I didn't.
It'd be really weird.
So fiction, just like her. But I love, and I connected with so many, especially Summer of Nene,
Mhm.
which I really enjoyed because I like that difference of viewpoint. Because
Mhm.
like you said, there's so many females,
Right.
female-centric characters, and I'm all for that, yes. But I also like that kind of dynamic between two men, or two boys becoming men. So how does a story like Summer of Nene come out? You said it was easy, you said it poured out of you.
Yeah.
But how does a story about two boys in love and having these kind of, dealing with so much of the homophobia and just like this toxic masculinity fit?
Right. You know, I was talking earlier at the Feminist Press. I remember that actually I was inspired by this story I saw in Zoetrope. I don't remember the name of the story, but it was written in a really unique way, but it was about two boys who were in a relationship, and I think I probably just had that in the back of my mind, and really what happened was I was living in Miami. One day I sat down to write, and I was just free writing, and half the story came out. And then I went to Chicago to do my PhD, and then I was like, oh, maybe I'll turn this in for class. So then I finished the other half, and like the story is like a first draft, and so I can't tell you. I mean, it just happened, and that's what happened.
It worked out.
Exactly.
It worked out. That's fine. But also you have stories like the titular one, Love War Stories, where it's actually like a tug of war between generations.
Right.
And I don't know about you, like tell us. The women in my family, I look at it very kind of hierarchical. Like we had the matriarch, who was my grandmother, and she took care of everything, and then her daughters pretty much, for the most part, took care of everything. And then we're just looking at women who have men leave them or do them wrong, but you still see these kind of stand-up powerful women. And even that can be a trigger, right? Being like a powerful woman of color.
Right.
It can be problematic because then you're seen as not needing affection.
Right.
And I feel like that story really kind of talks about that. So can you talk a little bit about if there's some elements of what you've seen, not just in like, you know, I don't know if it's feminist culture, but the protagonist seems like she's hardcore, like, I'm with it. I don't need no man, you know? I don't need no, fuck that.
Yes. Well, you know, part of this stems from being Puerto Rican, and I mean, this probably happens in other cultures too, but being Puerto Rican, you get a mixed message, which is, oh, you need to get a man, then men are all sucios, you can't trust them. And so, that's at the heart of this, that contradictory message that girls get. And, I said this somewhere else. When I was growing up, I grew up in Massachusetts, and I remember my father was abusive, and I remember thinking when women had partners, I felt sad for them because I thought they must be getting beaten. And so I guess that's my mentality. And so, so I feel like I always felt like it was worse when men were in the house. And so, so part of me feels like maybe it's better not to have a man around because nothing bad's going to happen to you.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
Sorry, that's a bit much.
Well, that's valid too, right? Because if you see the female persona and it's so exalted, then do you need, especially in the heterosexual relationship, like do you see a need for the male presence if it's like, well, like for me too, it's like my mom did everything. Why do I need, you know? And I was married for a little bit, and then I got divorced, and I was like, oh man, I need to change light bulbs. Right. And it's not a hard thing to do, but it's just like, it was nice to have someone else do it, but it's also, you know, when I did it, I felt powerful. I tweeted about it. I was like, I tried. So I could see that. But also in the, like you said, with Love War Stories, there's that conversation. And I don't want to go to it because I want you to buy it, I want you to read it, I want you to rate it. But there's that conversation that the protag has with her father, where there's no easy answers. There are these assumptions that men, that's what she's heard. She's heard men are crap, don't stay away, love is going to ruin you forever. And then talking to a man, you actually bring that perspective as well. So how do you balance that out? Because it could easily veer towards, misandry or perceived misandry, right? And then you want to balance that out as author.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a craft issue in the sense that you don't want to be so narrow in your perspective, and then you want to get into somebody else's head, even, not that you don't agree with their purpose, but if the men are set up as the antagonists here, that's a moment for me to get into their heads, and I think make a richer story than just make a story about bad men or what have you. So it's mostly about craft, I think. And then I think he provides a valid answer. I don't know if I should tell you, but, he says love is a starting point. Everybody thinks I don't know, I guess maybe love is like the wedding, but right, you have to deal with everything after the wedding. You have to deal with the relationship, and everybody sort of gets stuck on love, but there are all these other things that you have to do after that to maintain that relationship. And I was talking about somebody, we were talking about her relationship, and I thought her girlfriend was just terrible, and I was like, I think there are other things that should be more important, like self-care, or like that somebody respects you and treats you kindly. And so for me, the problem with love is that everybody says, even if somebody's abusive or what have you, or just treats you poorly, oh, but I love him. And the problem is, well, he's not very kind to you or very nice to you. And I think those things are more important. And everybody gets stuck at the altar, worshiping love. And I think that's problematic.
So did you ever push against those viewpoints that you were getting in your family? Because I don't know if you also grew up with the Disney films, and you know how those always end.
Right.
It's always happily ever after. And then I never questioned it at the time. And then I started questioning it.
Right.
But was there ever a point where you see these kind of conflicting narratives, and you ever thought about, okay, how does it go then?
No, I mean, I saw the conflicting narratives, and I guess I just believed them, and I went on in life, and then I had bad relationships, and then I was like, I'm old. I have other things to do, like write a book. And so I was like, I don't need all that. Because I'm like, when you're young, it's like you can sustain that hope, and like next time you meet a guy, maybe he's the one. But now I'm old, and I'm like, really? Can I really be that hopeful? I mean, my mother is still like, oh, maybe you'll meet a man. And I was like, really? Just let it go. Let it go. So I think it was when I was older that I pushed against it, But when I was younger, I believed it, and, But I think that young people should believe in love. I think they should be hopeful, and we were talking earlier, I love teen shows. My favorite is The Vampire Diaries, and I love Stefan Salvatore, and but I love that hopeful relationship that you see in teen shows because they don't know any better, and I just think it's sweet and endearing, and so I like watching that. But
Did you ever watch Buffy?
I did not. I tried to watch it recently, but I was like, I don't know. Is it worth watching?
I think so, but it's been a decade. So I may just be romanticizing it, and maybe it's, how certain things don't last with age, but certain things do, like I'm Gonna Get You Sucker, which is hilarious and stands the test of time. I also want to talk about the body. The body is so prevalent, especially in Holyoke girls, and in the last story in Summer of Nene, and for the Belindas.
Right.
And how you invoke that in terms of how the body is used against us, and how we also punish our bodies through those characters. It's a deep question.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'll talk about the Belindas because I think that's the one that most represents that. And so Belinda has an abusive boyfriend, and basically she gains about maybe 182 pounds, so she's unrecognizable. And gosh, I don't want to tell you the whole story, but she's multiplying as a person. That's why it's called the Belinda. So you see her in different stages, and as she's transforming from one Belinda to another. And, you know, from an outside perspective, you would see that she's damaged and broken, and, you know, she starts stalking her ex. And she sees how well his life is going. You know, he's still attractive or whatever, and so she's a little pissed about that. But, you know, ultimately, she was the one that was changing, and that's written on her body. Meanwhile, like, he was the same person. So, does that answer your question?
I think so.
Okay.
So do you see it as, like, for writers, potentially, this is cathartic, right?
Mhm.
Like, getting it all this out.
Mhm.
But for a character like Belinda, it becomes an obsession.
Mm-hmm.
And also for Holyoke Mass, when these kind of barriers, there's a lot of barriers created due to heartbreak.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a through line, I feel like, throughout the story collection, which is why I connected with it so much. It's just like, I'm like, I understand building a wall. I totally understand that. Do you think, whether it's in the fiction world or even in the real world, that building those walls is just a natural progression, or that we should actually try to tear those walls down? And that's an internal thing.
I don't know. I think it's more like, I think you need to learn from your experiences, and I think that you really have to examine who you are, like, and if you have a terrible experience, who are you and in what ways did you participate? And so, I don't know if it's necessarily a wall that you need to build, but I think you need to examine yourself and change that.
So that's to make the same mistakes. Do you think if there's an armor, there's a certain level of armor that's needed in contrast to a wall?
I think maybe at the outset, I think that's like an initial stage, almost like anger is an initial stage for certain things. But I think you can move past that and still like come out having learned something, you know? So, yeah, I mean, I don't think I have an armor, but, you know, like, but I've learned things along the way, and I think that's the important thing at the end is learning something more so than having a wall or armor.
And as a storyteller, do you kind of look for that aim as learning something? Okay, I want my characters to learn something in terms of the story. Because we think, we being like editors, we kind of think, what's someone coming away from this story? But I don't know that writers really come through, because when we come with a mission, sometimes it really affects the narrative.
Yeah, no, I don't think I go in with that intent. If anything, I have an intent where I'm like I want the reader to learn something new, like something that she or he can take away. But no, I don't think I'm that intentional in that way. Because at the end of the day, you know, I have an MFA and a PhD in creative writing, so, you know, craft is, you know, on my mind, and, you know, I'll just leave it there.
So how is your writing going in terms of when you produce something? Is it really finite? Is it pretty much you go back all the time, or you kind of, what do they call it? Like there's a plotter and pantsers. Yeah. Plotter and pantsers.
I think I do both. So I'm a pantser at first. So basically, I write terrible first drafts, and it's terrible for a while. And what I'm doing is I'm just trying to get ideas out and see what comes out. Most of my stories, they just start with a kernel of an idea, so I don't have a full story when I start. And then somewhere in the middle, that's when I start to outline, and then I will try to make scenes then, and I try to get everything in place, like all the scenes in place so that it reads in a seamless way, and then I do line edits after that. And so that's how I work. So it's kind of slow, but I don't know how else to do it.
Define slow.
Like, well, you know, like, it's kind of hard because you're like battling with yourself, and you're like, I'm gonna just get all this out, but then you're like, am I wasting my time because I didn't outline? And so, I mean, it takes a while because you have like this kind of lump of stuff and it's just a mess, and you then have to like, it's like, you know, having clay or something, and then you're just starting from scratch. So I have a friend who writes really fast. I don't know how she does it, but I mean, I really assume that if you knew what you were going to write first, that would be quicker. So, you know, I mean, I could say months maybe. And then I'm like super critical, and then I need to leave something, let it sit, and then come back to it.
That sounds fast to me. I work in book publishing, but months sounds fast, whereas it literally takes me years.
No, but this is like, I'm talking about months, like, all together, not consecutively. I started this, 20 years ago, so that in no way was fast. But if I take all the time that I worked on it,
But yet, Tan Wen said the same thing with his collection that came out, I think last year. It was a collection of stories that was over the course of 15 or so years, so it wasn't as though that came cohesively together.
Yes.
So in terms of 20 years, was it that you wanted to do an anthology or a collection, and that was your intent, or you were just writing stories and as they came, and then you had a bunch of stories and you said, oh, this is a collection?
No, it's, I started the first story, which is Love War Stories. I started it my last year in college, and then I applied to MFA programs because, that was 97, so it might be harder now. But anyway, somehow Emerson let me in, and so I started learning how to write there, and then eventually I went and did my PhD, so I was become a stronger writer thereafter. So I had to learn how to write, basically, and then you let something sit, you think it's done, and then you realize, what was I thinking, it's not done. So you just go through all that. The 20 years, it's like, should it have taken 20 years? No. But like I said, I had to learn how to write, and then also you're working, and you have to like I'm an introvert, and I'm old, and I'm just tired, and when I get home, it's nap time, and so it's a little hard to write, with that. So I just had to be more committed and make the space for it, and so and that's how it eventually got done. And also there's a lot of fear in the process. And one of the things that was important for me was learning my process. So then I learned that, like, I write the terrible drafts, blah, blah, blah. But I know that at every start of a new story, I feel like I'm at the bottom of a mountain. And then I just gotta keep climbing. And then I think, oh my God, this story's never gonna come together. And then I have a breakthrough moment. And so when I learned that, next time I was in the same position, I could remind myself, I've been here before. After, I feel hopeless, the breakthrough is going to come, and that's what would happen. So I think that was beneficial because you learn that you can actually do it.
But over 20 years, that's a level of persistence that's really deep. Because some people would have just been, well, I guess this isn't it. I should, take up knitting. And then you should crochet pussy hats. You know what I mean?
I know.
For the cause. But what kept you going? I'm always intrigued by this because I have friends who've quit. Yeah. Wonderfully talented friends, and often writers of color who quit because it was too hard. You have that voice in the back of your head that's saying, this is never going to happen, the frustration, the rejection, it just compounds so much. But you did this, so what kept you going?
I think when I was young, for some reason, I thought, oh, I'm going to be special. And then
reality hits.
Right, it did hit. But on the special topic, but one day I was working illegally in the tobacco fields. Over the summer. I came home, and basically this man showed up, and he was like, hey, you want to go to this boarding school? Because my friend had recommended him to me, and literally he showed up at my door. And then I felt pretty special, and and then I went, and I had a full scholarship for 4 years, and then I went to Columbia, so I'm still feeling special. I got into an MFA program, still special, and then the PhD program, and then I couldn't get this book published. I wasn't ready, so I didn't feel special anymore, and then I was just had an existential crisis, and I was like, I failed at life. Why did you lie to me and tell me what I'm special? What I was like, what was this all for? And so I was really depressed, and my therapist just got pissed at me one day, and she just snapped, and then I had to leave her because I was like, so then I tried to quit, but then I'm like, what am I going to do in my life if I don't? So then, I don't know. I actually started working on a novel, and I was getting into that, and then I saw that the Feminist Press had the Louise Merriweather contest, and I'm like, I'll just send it in. And then I was a finalist. I didn't win, but they wanted to publish it anyway, which was like a dream. It's like one of those urban legend publishing stories, So I'm like, I feel special again.
Props, Feminist Press. I also kind of felt that way, and then I started working, and I said, oh, okay, this is how it goes.
Right, exactly.
Honor roll means nothing. You gotta come to work on time. Okay. It is a reality check. It's like, even for kids of color, you're like, what do you mean? I don't understand. My mom says I'm beautiful. So I'm super excited about this book, and I want to talk a little bit because we're going to take questions from y'all, and if it gets awkward, I have more questions. Don't worry, I have you covered. But the Holyoke Girls, and I was reading Elizabeth Acevedo's The Poet X. I love that book. I love that book so hard. And it is about a story essentially about a woman who's hardened, a young woman who's hardened, and she's trying to find love or just be loved by so many people in her life. And Holyoke Mass Girls it resonated so much with me because I really kind of gravitate to stories of trying to break down stereotypes of, well, like I was saying, the exalted woman, the strong matriarch, like backbreaking, and we get to for at least for the African American areas, like you think the Aunt Jemimas, you think very, very old school. And I just love this look at a woman holding in her tears and then just fighting so much and thinking there's something wrong with their body. I related to that so much. So I know you said you don't always come in with a topic or knowing what it is, but how was the progression of that particular story? Because it's one of the longer ones, and it's done in a very vignetted way.
Right.
So it's not necessarily like Summer of Nene where it's like, a linear tale.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, this is a weird story because you're not going to see it in the story at all. But I guess I was inspired to write it. I have a half sister, and her boyfriend threw her down the stairs, which you don't see that in the story at all. But I don't know. It just then made me think I should write about Holyoke, and so I wrote about. I lived in Holyoke, Massachusetts until I was 13. I went to boarding school, but I wanted to capture what it was like to be a girl there. So first, like I would see white girls on TV, and they were like 13, and I thought it was so weird, that they were, I don't know, they were playing with dolls or something, and they looked really young, but we had bodies, and makeup, and I had an 18-year-old boyfriend, and, and that was just so normal to me. And that's, we would gosh, I hope my mother never sees this. But, we would get in cars with boys and just drive around, which I know sounds dangerous now. but that's what we did, and I don't know, and then most of my friends were pregnant by the end of 8th grade, and so I don't know. I lived in a different world, and so I wanted to capture that early sexuality of the girls in Holyoke. It also has the highest teenage pregnancy rate, I think, in Massachusetts. Really? It does. It's one of those things. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that died. Oh. So, and then I wanted to capture that hardness. I'm a pretty passive person in general, and I remember this girl came and she hit me. I kissed her. Well, her boyfriend kissed me.
That was a quick adjustment. It wasn't me.
One day, that was her bad. So she was pissed about it, but this was months later, and so anyway, so she hit me, and I had this halter top, and I was trying to hold in my chest, and anyways, so basically, like I said, I'm pretty passive, and but then the next day I went back to knuckle up because I was you sucker punched me. Do I want to fight? No, but I know that I have to, or else I look like a sucker. So, that's the life we had, and we all did what we had to do.
I remember that, even though I'm from New York City, I remember those kind of just you said what? Right, and it's on, and you're oh God.
Right.
How did this happen? And then 2 days later, it's fine. It's so weird. I really that was very well captured. And also, remember the outlines, the brown outlines around your lipstick?
Yes.
I could just go on and be remember that? So does anyone else have questions? I wanted to keep on time. Does anyone have questions? We can just stare at each other. Is that a legit question, or are you just stretching? Okay. Yes.
I was just wondering, what have you read recently that you want more people to know about?
What has she read recently that she wants more people to know about?
Somebody asked me that this morning, but she was like, "What was the last book you loved?" And I was like, I recently, what? The PhD ruined me because now I can't read the same way that I used to.
Are you overly critical?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and it's not fun. Anyways, I did just read Fruit of the Drunken Tree by Ingrid Rojas Contreras. Mm-hmm. I interviewed her. I gotta get it together and send it to you.
Oh yay!
And it's really it's a really interesting book in the sense that I think first she's adding to the body of literature of Colombian American literature, and then also while the story takes place during Escobar's time, he's in the background. He's not in the foreground, so she shifts the narrative, and I think she does a lot of interesting things with class. She follows her main character is wealthy, but what you learn throughout is just because you're wealthy, you're not safe from anything. You're not safe from violence. You're not safe from inconveniences of public works not working. You're not safe in having a stable home. So I think she does a lot, and it comes out soon, the 30th. It comes out at the end of this month. So I would recommend Ingrid's book.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
You mentioned Vampire Diaries.
Yes.
Why that show?
Why the Vampire Diaries?
For some reason, I don't know why, but I read the YA book, and then I just started, then I was like, I'm going to watch this on Netflix, and then I got a little obsessive, and then my mother was watching it with me, and we couldn't stop, and then I used part of my advance money to go to a Vampire Diaries class. And I met Paul Wesley, who plays Stephen Salvatore. And I took a picture with him, and I looked terrible, but I was like, I don't care. I love him.
Anyone else? Okay, I'll jump in if someone, let it marinate, we'll come back. What is the best advice you got? Whether it's writing related or love related, what is the best advice you think you've gotten? And conversely, what is the worst advice you've gotten?
Writing related, I'm sorry, it was by Juno Diaz, and he said you need to have, like, what are your characters, like, there's like a surface story, and then there's like a story that's below the level. And he said it was like your characters, you're having them do something, I'm not explaining it very well. It's like there's a surface story, right? The things that your characters are doing, but then there's this other story, like, under the layer. I think it's what you want for your characters and what the characters want for themselves. So that, I think, was the most helpful advice, because then I think about that, and my friend's getting her book published, and I read her story, and I was like, hey, you know, like, what does your character want? I know that what you want, but that's not enough. And so I find that very helpful.
And what's been the worst advice you've gotten, writing or otherwise? So much.
I know. Think of bad writing advice. I mean, I guess it would just be like bad critiques or something, like bad critiques in the sense that they don't help you at all, you know, and they're just useless. So, yeah.
Do you feel like write what you know is a bad piece of advice, or that it's constraining?
I think it's a little cliche, and like, no, I mean, this is fiction, so I feel like you should be using your imagination and creating new worlds, and I don't think you should over-rely on your personal history.
Yeah. Well, also when I think write what you know, I think depending on who's saying it, you know, like in my grad school, in my undergrad, it was like a lot of older white guys, older white straight guys, so they were like, write what you know, and I'm like, as in being black, middle class, working class, or is it really taking the compendium of knowledge of emotion and being able to effectively put that into different characters that may or may not look like you? So my ideology about it has changed over the years, where I really felt like people were saying, just write about living with a single mother, with an abusive husband, and then it's write what you know of bringing something very heartening and very true to your life, but in different circumstances, which I think you have effectively done in this story. Like, I wasn't saying, oh, this is Ivelisse's life. She's telling on herself. But I thought this is a writer with a very intimate knowledge of what she wants to convey through these characters, through Nene, through a boy in a wheelchair, through a woman fighting with her mother, through a young girl whose aunt is obsessed with, you know, telenovelas. So I thought the work that you did in Love War Stories is very representative of a wonderful voice, and I'm very happy to read this.
Thank you.
So, yay!
So we always assume we know how it's going to feel at the end. How do you feel, and is it what you were expecting?
Like getting it published?
No, like, how do you feel? Like, how do you, like, when you saw it and now here, like, how does it feel? Like, how?
Right.
It's like, I gave birth. Oh my God, it's so painful, but I hate you.
I don't hate it. That's for sure. I was talking to the interns earlier at Feminist Press, and so we were talking about this, and you know, because I'm 42, and I was like, you know, this didn't happen for so long. Like, I didn't have any expectations. Like, I was like, hey, it's gonna get published, finally. You know, I achieved my goal, but I'm also very realistic, and I feel like there's so many books that are published, and you just never know who's gonna get attention or not, and so I didn't really expect anything, and so all of it has been really exciting. And I'm in this Facebook group for authors who are debuting, and some people are really like sad, and I'm like, you have some unrealistic expectations, so
Ivelisse is like,
and I think part of it is just luck, like, I think that's very true, and people want to say it's, all talent, and I don't necessarily think that. I think that I got lucky that, it got some press, It could have been any other book, and, I've read plenty of books that deserved more attention and didn't get it, so I just got lucky, guys.
because you're special.
Yes, sir.
So I really appreciate your humor and your honesty and your consistency. That was really great for you to read. I was very much struck by what you were saying about love, it being the title of being a central idea of the work. I guess when you were saying, maybe I misheard it because it struck me so much, so I want to hear more about it, but that love was for like for people who are mature, for people who are like young, and I think you were saying it as a joke, which I very much appreciate. But I guess I wanted to know through the act of writing and maybe through the act of publishing and just thinking about it, is that really where you are in terms of as an author and as your vision of love? Is it really something that is for the young and not for anyone else? Can you say more about that? But you seem so rich, and I want to hear you say more about it.
Sure. Well, actually, I think people get different stories, like in terms of love stories. I feel like some people are going to have these great love stories, but I feel like that's maybe like 25% of the population. And I think other people are just going to have bad love stories, and it just doesn't gel. Like, my mother, how old is she? She's 62, and she was married a couple years ago, and her husband was lovely. He unfortunately died, but he was a great person, and even I liked him, and I thought he was great. Like, I wasn't like serial killer, and so I mean, I think it can happen and stuff for other people. I just don't think it's gonna happen for me. Like, I just think like I'm over it, and and I feel like
it happens.
And I do appreciate other people's love stories, and I'm happy for other people. Like, I don't want kids, but friends have kids. I'm like, yay, that's exciting. But I think the best people I think that can appreciate love are the young, because they're so hopeful, I feel, and it's like so new, and it's like your life is ahead of you, and it's so, I mean, I think for some people it can happen, but I feel like it's more for the young in the sense that they can feel it more. So, I don't know. Are you still, how do you feel about that?
I feel like we're in the middle of it. I guess I'm wondering, and I just so much appreciate your honesty, but I guess I'm wondering, do you imagine that's something that's happening now? It's a larger idea. It feels to me that the modern, and I can't tell because this is the world I live in, but this idea that of just a deep, profound isolation and it's a fragmentation and the kind of toxicity that you were talking about. I mean, there's a lot that's really good about rooting things in a really healthy way, but I think it also is causing a great amount of pain and isolation. Do you see it as something that is for you personally, or do you think the larger statements about the world that I also live in and am sad about?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's just my personal view, and I know nobody else really believes that, but I mean, it's just I really like being alone. I used to teach at BMCC, and I'd come home after teaching 6 hours, and I'd be like, oh my God, I don't know how anybody comes home to a family. I'm so tired, Like, I'm just going to sit here and play with my dog. And, like, sometimes I think maybe I should just be a hermit. Like, I don't know. I really like being alone. I like staying home. Like, You know, I mean, when I was 20, you know, we would go out at 11 o'clock at night in heels, and then I was like, I can't do that anymore. So then it went down to dinner, then it went down to lunch. I want to be home early. So
Now it's breakfast.
so, I mean, I just, you know, that's just my routine. You're welcome.
Can I ask, because I kind of differ in terms of the anti-love stories. And I want to know your opinion. Do you feel like your characters have happy endings? Like, what are, obviously, we're not going to talk about every story about happiness by the book. But, you know, like for the Belindas or like Summer of Nene, like, is there a happy ending for these characters that you foresee? We may not see it on the page, but maybe, for me, you know, I'm a New Yorker, so sometimes I'm just like, yeah, they got Netflix tonight. That was a success. You know, like me getting home in an hour and the train's not met. Like, this is successful. So do you kind of see those like wins for those characters, whether it's I'm coupled up or I appreciate solitude, which is different from loneliness?
Right. No, I think actually, I feel like they do have happy endings. It's just sort of an unconventional happy ending. Even the first story, I'm not going to tell you what happens, but I feel like there's an idea of brokenness, but it's not necessarily a negative thing. And yeah, I just feel like it's not conventional happiness, but I feel like almost all of them, not all of them, but a lot of them have happy endings. I think happy endings. Ivelisse happy endings. So, you know.
Well, thank you, Ivelisse, so much for the